a boxing betting expert.
I know, David.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
He really gets into the nitty-gritty of this whole thing.
Darren, good evening.
David, thanks for having me on your channel.
Very excited. Thanks for sparing some time. I've been following you. I think you appeared on YouTube about 6 months ago. I love what you're doing. You're very insightful. You have good guests on, good interviews, predictions, and you also get to the fight. So it's nice to see you actually at those fights and reporting from there. So excited to talk to you.
Thanks for the compliments, David. I really appreciate that. Cheers.
Great stuff. So, what? It's just mainly YouTube, and I think you're on Twitter, X, and you do a bit of TikTok, Insta, Facebook.
Yeah, I've got Instagram and I've got Facebook. The TikTok thing is just my YouTube channel, basically. Just recently started on there, so I'm not massive on there at the moment. But my Facebook and Instagram account is just obviously my personal account. And I do share some of my boxing YouTube stuff on there, but it's like my life of where I go and what I do and everything like that.
Right. Now, it seems to me you post quite a lot of your YouTube. Certainly, you're very active, which is great. Like 2 or 3 times a week, is it?
Yeah, probably more so lately. It depends what time I've got. Obviously, working a full-time job, coming home and trying to jiggle the time is difficult times. But I try to put 2-3 things out a week if I can. Yeah, and I mean, I'm having a good ride with it. I'm enjoying it. It's good to do. Brilliant.
Okay, so like I said, I've watched a lot of your stuff, and I am interested in your background to how you got into the sport. So the first question we ask is, what is your first boxing memory, or is there a first fight that stands out in your mind?
My first boxing memory is going to be when I was I think it was about 6 years old. I used to watch the boxing with my dad. And when I was growing up, I always have a vision of, he had an old VHS tape of Mike Tyson scrambling in the ring, looking for his gum shield when James Buster Douglas knocked him out. I always remember my dad having that on a VHS recording. Yeah, and I think I was like 5 or 6 years of age at the time, and that is my first real. When I look back at boxing, that is my first real memory of it. So, and that's probably where I got hooked. I didn't get hooked immediately, but that always sticks in my mind when I think of that when I was a young kid. Yeah.
So, were you aware of the significance of it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, as I got older, it became more apparent of what it was all about. But I actually followed Mike Tyson a hell of a lot after that. I loved the way he took his fights in the ring. I loved his aggressive style. Obviously, he always went for big knockouts and things like that. And I loved his approach to his fights. I mean, as I got older, I become more aware of his pre-fight antics and his press conferences and things like that. But I weren't as a young kid aware of all that as such then. Yeah. But yeah, that was my first real good memory of it. Yeah.
That's good timing, because Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson was exactly 35 years ago tomorrow as we're recording. 11th of February.
Okay. I never actually knew. I knew, it was 1990, but I couldn't remember when the actual date was. No, why didn't
yes. Know that. Yeah, 35 years. It's 35 years. And so 5-year-old kid, and then he disappears, and then he comes back. What was the sort of first fight when you were after that, when you were aware of him and his sort of position in the history of the sport?
Obviously, I remember I watched obviously the Frank Bruno fights back. For me then, obviously as a young kid, it was more going on to like with the British fighters, like your Frank Bruno's, the rematch with Frank Bruno and things like that. I actually, growing up, when eBay became about, I actually ordered, someone was selling the Mike Tyson collection of every fight he had, and the Lennox Lewis one as well. And I actually ordered all that and watched, I went through it. Like, I think when I was, I don't know, it was when I was in one of my first jobs, I was coming home every night and watching a couple of fights every night with Mike Tyson.
DVD or VHS?
DVD, yeah. It was DVD, yeah. It was DVD, then not VHS. So I watched a couple of fights every night over so many weeks and months, and I've done the same. I've done the same with Lennox Lewis as well.
Brilliant. I did the same, but in VHS, and I had the back catalogue on VHS, and it used to just go around my friendship group, this box of VHS videos. Everyone would just take turns doing the whole Mike Tyson thing.
Yeah.
So your father was a big Tyson fan, though, was he?
Yeah, I mean, he still loves the boxing now. But the one thing I will say about my dad, he was always what you'd call an armchair fan. He never really went to the events. I didn't really go to events with my dad as a boxing fan. I've always been into other sports as well. I've always been massively into horse racing, which my dad always took me to as a kid, and I still go with him now. Football matches, Aston Villa fan. So I was never really a regular at boxing events with my dad, but he always sort of like got me into the sport because he did always used to watch it on TV, you know, like the Ben Eubank days and you know, Lennox Lewis coming through when Frank Bruno was about. I always, the great old days of the ITV sports fight nights and things like that, great days.
Classics, yeah. And have you ever boxed?
I've done boxing training. I've done it over so many years at different times. I had to like train. I'd come away from it for a few months. You know, being committed to it is a hard commitment when you're like working and things like that. Yeah. I have done boxing. I've done boxing training. I've never had a fight, but I've done quite a bit of sparring over the years. But I've never actually had a fight. Yeah. People have always tried to get me to have a white collar fight, and I always said before I got to 40 I would, and I'm 40 now, so I haven't done it yet. Whether I do it yet, I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah, I reckon you got 5 good years in you. 45.
I'd like to say more, but we'll give you that one. Yeah.
Okay, and so do you think like having trained to like obviously quite a high level, then does that help you when you're assessing the fights or when you're judging fights when you're watching them live?
Probably, yeah. I mean, what you do is when you've had a bit of experience in the ring, obviously I've got nothing compared to some of these people that are involved with it. But yeah, I think you appreciate more how tough it is. And I think you appreciate how tough the training is as well. I mean, boxing training, some of the circuits I used to do, I used to be nearly physically sick after doing them because it was that hard. So you do appreciate that aspect of the game, yeah. And, you know, taking shots. I mean, I never really used to wear a head guard because I like to do it without.
Right.
I used to try and train myself to do it without. I did wear it at times, but I'd also done it without. But I was always a bit suspect to the body, I was, rather than the head. So if anyone's watching, I have a white collar fight within the future. Hit me to the body.
Secrets out. Yeah. We'll just cut that bit out if you do the fight.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what sort of style were you?
I'm just orthodox, but I can do both. I've always been one that liked to be able to train in both styles, and I'm much more comfortable with an orthodox style. But as a southpaw, I can do both, but I'm much more comfortable with the orthodox. But I think it's as a boxer, if you can do both, it's a massive plus to your game.
Yeah, and what sort of they've got the Mike Tyson peekaboo style going on, or?
Well, I always when I've done my training at different stages throughout my life, I always followed different fighters. I used to like the Vladimir Klitschko style at one point. I tried to do that. Wow. And then there was a point where I liked the Floyd Mayweather style, where he was very guard up. And I actually sparred Rachel Ball, because the gym that I used to go to, Rachel Ball, who fought Shannon Courtney in, I think it was Eddie Earn's back garden when they done that show. I actually done 3 rounds sparring with her.
Oh, wow.
And I'd done the Floyd Mayweather style in that spar. And she actually said to me, she said, like, it's really, really hard to get to you. And I thought, I want to carry this Floyd Mayweather style on. So I did do that for a little bit. And then I moved on to, I've done Vladimir Klitschko, Floyd Mayweather. Who else did I try and intimidate? As I've got older, it's more Usyk style. I like that.
Right. Yeah. Nice. Taking from the best. Okay. So who has been your favourite boxer to watch over the years?
At different stages, really. I mean, I liked Mike Tyson early, but as he went by, I mean, this is my opinion. There's a lot of people that disagree with me on this. I sort of saw that Mike Tyson was the bully and he didn't like being bullied. And then people like Lennox Lewis come along, and I saw guys that could sort of take it and dish it out. Whereas I don't think Mike Tyson always liked taking it. He was great at dishing it out, but I don't think he liked taking it back. Whereas Lennox Lewis obviously got stopped in his career, but he always come back and avenged them defeats. And I always liked that about Lennox Lewis. So he was a massive one for me. And I've always been a big heavyweight boxing fan because I've always saw it as the pinnacle of the sport. No disrespect to any of the other weights, but it's always been the pinnacle of the sport for me. So I've always been a big, massive heavyweight fan.
Yeah.
So it's always Lennox Lewis. And then when he went, I did like the Klitschko's, and that will probably surprise a few people as well, because the Klitschko brothers was never really an attractive style to a lot of people, particularly probably Vladimir, because he did lack the killer instinct for me at times. He'd like to coast his way through a fight on the jab. Whereas I always saw Vitaly Klitschko, his brother, someone who had more the killer instinct, who wanted to get in the ring and finish a fighter, which I like because it's exciting to watch. So there was the Klitschko brothers, Lennox Lewis. But as we've got into the more modern game, you know, there's several fighters. Usyk, you know, he's just perfection for me.
Yeah.
I always like the Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank Senior fights. They were always great to watch. There's loads of fighters for me. Yeah,
it's really interesting, Darren. I think I've spoken to nearly 20 people now on in these chats. You're the first person to give any props to the Klitschko brothers. They have not been mentioned once. And I remember Vladimir going 3 rounds without throwing a right hand. He would just throw the jab for 3 rounds. And so that's I mean, that's an interesting, like you say, not many people put them up there on the pedestal, but obviously shows your passion for the sport.
Well, I always think it was very fascinating as well to have 2 brothers that were dominating the heavyweight division for so long as world champions. I mean, you know, we know it was a poor era of heavyweight boxing, but I always found it like so good the way 2 brothers could dominate like that. And then there was talks of them at one point fighting each other, which didn't come off.
Yeah.
And they always had a reputation of a very robotic style, probably more Vladimir than Vitaly, but it was very effective at what they'd done. Very, very effective. And it was so hard to beat.
Absolutely. And I wonder what they'd do now. I mean, in this era, how they'd be competing. Like you say, they were in a weak era. I'd love to see them around now.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to just take these different eras and put them all together. But unfortunately, time doesn't allow us that, does it?
Yeah, I know. And even just saying it aloud, it makes you think, oh, yeah, they'd probably be cleaning up right now, but maybe they wouldn't. Who knows? So I know you go to a lot of fights. You've been to a lot of Derek Chisora fights. You were there just the weekend gone. So talk to me a little bit about the fights you've seen, the best fight you've seen live.
Ooh, live. Probably big fight live. The best I've seen has got to be Anthony Joshua versus Klitschko at Wembley.
Oh, yeah,
wow. For excitement, that was just it's not just the stage it was on, the atmosphere. It was sort of like the coming out of Anthony Joshua.
Yeah.
You know, Klitschko was the sort of like the veteran at the time, and when he got dropped, Anthony Joshua, the only thing we ever saw about his chin getting tested before that was when Dillian White hit him with that left hook in that round 2 of that fight, and after that, I'm like, I don't know what his chin's like. I was surprised he got up against Vladimir Klitschko the way he did.
Yeah.
And he done well. But for me, in that fight, Vladimir Klitschko should have finished him off.
Yeah.
He let him off the hook.
So did you go to that fight thinking it was, like you say, AJ's coming out party, he's going to win in style? Or did you think Vlad had a chance?
Do you know what, David? As a fight fan, I generally go as a neutral.
Yeah.
I've got my sort of select favourite fighters, but I generally go as a neutral. I don't really go as I really want that person to win.
Right.
Most of the fights I attend are as a neutral.
Yeah.
I was happy for Klitschko or Joshua to win that fight.
Right,
I probably thought Vladimir would win because I thought his experience would tell in the fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So are you not a big betting guy then?
I'm a massive betting guy. I am, honestly. I am. I love a bet. Not just boxing, horses and everything.
Right. Okay. But you didn't bet that fight?
I would probably think I did, but I can't remember the bet I had. I'd have to scroll back through my Sky Bet history
Okay,
find that
yeah.
one.
Right.
But I probably did. But if I for how I thought the fight would go, I would probably have had a Vladimir Klitschko stoppage.
Yeah.
At the time.
At big odds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you sort of intimated this one earlier, but do you have a favourite weight division, and if so, why?
Yeah, the heavyweight division. I just think it's the pinnacle of the sport. And growing up, it's always been the names for me. Like I say, it was Tyson, then it was Bruno, then it was Lewis, then it was the Klitschkos. Now we got the Usyks. I've always liked Tyson Fury.
Really? Okay.
But the way, I mean, I've been to a couple of Tyson Fury fights. I just always liked him. But as he got more advanced in his career, I always thought he was a bit of an idiot the way he acted.
Yeah.
But I massively respect him for what he's done in the ring. But just his antics outside the ring at times, I've not liked.
Yeah. Do you think we'll see him again?
Yeah, I do. I actually done a show on my channel about this. I think we will see him again, and I'd like to think if it is going to be his going out fight, it'd probably be against Anthony Joshua.
I agree. This summer, yeah, it's too much money in it. Yeah,
lots of money involved. I just can't see it not happening.
Yeah, and also, he's a good matchmaker, Tyson Fury. He knows who's got his number and whose number he's got, and I think he'll be pretty confident against AJ.
And he knows what he's doing, trying to sell that fight as well by booking in his early retirement again.
Well, maybe he genuinely thinks that's it, and then he's going to have a couple of months off and come back, or maybe it is just, or also maybe he just puts stuff out, doesn't give it a second thought, but obviously it goes viral because he's Tyson Fury, and he's like, no, but what about, so in your years like watching boxing, has there ever been a rule that you think should be changed to make the sport better?
I don't think you'd be able to. Well, I haven't really got the solution how you would change it. I suppose this is going to be as time goes by with computers and technology. For example, this weekend just gone, judges' scorecards. There was 3 judges that obviously watched the fight. The one judge had Derek Chisora winning the fight 114, 112. If he didn't have the knockdowns in that fight would have been a draw. There's no way that fight should have ever been a draw or even close to a draw. So I think something has got to be done with the judging.
Yeah.
Whether it's a technology thing, I don't know, because that was trialled obviously for the Tyson Fury Usyk fight, and the scorecards with the technology was horrific. So obviously it needs a lot of polishing up, but something's got to change for me.
Did you score the Chisora fight on Saturday?
I didn't actually score it. If I'm scoring a fight, I'll generally score it at home rather than being at the event. Yeah. I haven't watched the fight back yet, but I'd like to say there's probably more main event fights, or if there's a controversial card, I'll go back and watch it again and score it and see what I actually think. That I do actually do that, yeah.
So I'm going to push you on that, Darren. So that would be you answered the question by telling me something that you want to be fixed, but actually that's not how. If there was something you could change, though, what would it be?
I can't. The only thing I can honestly think of is the judges. The judges. I mean, I'm trying to think what else I'd fix. I don't like misfits boxing. I would like to be able. Well, I don't envy them what they're doing. It's their own sport. It's their own way of doing things. But I really wouldn't have professional fighters going into a misfits boxing fight. I don't think it's right, really. I think it should be kept separately. I think it's more pantomime than boxing. So if I could fix that, I'd keep that a separate division completely. You
do wonder that perhaps it is overall, I don't particularly like it either, but good for the sport because it's just increasing eyeballs. And if they see that because they follow someone on social media, then the crossover, that's the big thing for Jake Paul, isn't it? It's like, we got to support him because he brings new, fresh, Okay, so, and, if you've got the betting angle for this one, great. If not, it's fine. But what is the best hot take you've had when you've been like assessing a boxing match?
Well, I'd I'd come up with this one, but it didn't actually come off, but it should have come off. I backed Jack Cattrall to beat Josh Taylor on points at 16-1, I think
Wow.
it was.
Wow.
And I was actually at my sister and brother-in-law's house at the time, watching that fight. And I think I had, 10 quid on it or something like that. And I was sitting there in round 12, so comfortable that I'd won that fight.
Ah,
And then them scorecards got read out, and I was like, that's just my luck.
Yeah.
It was just a shocker that I never got that one.
Yeah.
There was another one, but it was more lower down. I don't know if anybody remembers. Well, probably not, because it was an early fight on Sky Sports years ago. I forget the guy's name now. He's from Newcastle, big heavyweight, and he was I'd have to go search his name, but he was in play on Sky Sports, and he was sort of like 1-16 on or something.
Right.
And I backed the other guy at something like 12-1.
Wow.
Because I think it was a 10-round fight or something, and I think it was 3 rounds in. I thought this guy's like coming on into the fight here, and it went the distance. The other guy won on points. That was an in play one, so that was a good one as well. Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah. That Catterall run is as brutal as it gets.
Yeah.
You must all the way until the MC's got the microphone. You're celebrating.
Yeah, I was at my sister and brother-in-law's house, and there was I was so confident. Which we went on a Saturday night for a gathering. I was sitting there thinking, 170 quid richer here. That'll do me, lovely jubbly. And then and that happens.
And you can they still do the odds after the final bell before the decision. And Catterall must have been 25-1 on at that point. Your bet must have looked.
Yeah, and then that happens, and then obviously we get the rematch, and Jack Cattrall rewrites the script and wins that one. But I didn't actually bet on that one because it was too. I'm more, if I have a little bet on something, I'm more not outsider as such, but I like a bit of value.
Oh, okay, yeah, you want the bigger price. All right, okay. So what about the other end when you've got it wrong? A cold take where you've just thought you knew what was going to happen, and you've just been exposed and thought, no, got that one wrong.
Well, I'm not going to sit here saying I don't get any wrong because I get plenty wrong. But try and think of one in the recent memory. Well, the weekend actually just gone. I thought Otto Wallin was going to win on points because I thought he would keep behind the jab effectively and stop Derek Chisora coming inside, and it just never happened. And he was so poor in that fight, and he's deluded me a bit twice now because against Anthony Joshua, I backed Otto Wallin to beat Anthony Joshua on points as well. Okay. So Otto Wallin's not very favourable in my books lately.
I mean, we probably won't see much of him again, but strike him off the list.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, a lot of people, he was a decent favourite at the weekend. A lot of people thought, Chisora's 41, so that's okay. So, excluding Otto Wallin, who is the most overrated boxer you've seen over the years?
Well, I'll come back to, I think it was the very first fight I went to, which will surprise you. I think I was 25 or 26 was the first time I went to a boxing event, and it was David Haye versus Audley Harrison.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And Audley Harrison, like he did with Eddie Hearn, really convinced me that he was going to do everything to David Haye that he promised. And like Audley Harrison had so much potential, and for the opportunities he had in his career, I think I'd have to say him, because he wasn't overrated as such, but he led everyone down the garden path every time about what he was going to do in the sport of boxing.
Yeah.
And I went to that fight thinking that he was really going to show up against David Haye. Wow. And it was going to be a great fight. It was going to be super exciting to watch, like he did with Eddie Hearn. I mean, Eddie Hearn was promoting that show. I think it was one of his early shows. And he wrote me off a big one.
It was the "Yes, I Can" thing, wasn't it? That was the thing. Yes, I mean, he barely threw a punch.
Barely threw a punch in 3 rounds. Got stopped, and that event actually sold out, and I paid double the price for tickets for that off if you do as a seller, off a buyer, and I was gutted. I think my ticket was £200 for that fight or something,
right.
and it was in the upper tier as well.
Well, and I think there was booing. You were there, but I think there was booing within about 2 minutes. You know, it was straight away.
I think I was one of them that was booing.
Yeah, like Audley, like I really like Audley Harrison the person, but that era of boxing, you know, is a pretty strange time to be a British boxing fan with, you know, Audley and Danny Williams and those guys just sort of exchanging defeats left, right. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't, like you say, it was a strange time. I mean, I never even mentioned David Haye earlier, but I travelled all the way to Germany to watch David Haye against Klitschko.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've seen some disappointing performances.
I have, yeah. I mean, the amount of money I've spent over the years. I mean, what was I 20? That was 2000. Was that 2011? I think July 2011. I think it was.
Yeah.
So I'd have been like 26 at the time, something like that. And I didn't go by plane or anything like that. I actually got the coach to Dover, ferry to Calais. And I got on a coach and transfer all the way from France to Germany. I think it took me like 20 hours to get there.
Wow.
So no one can question my dedication.
But that's for a fight that I expected big things from Haye in that fight, and he just didn't deliver, you know.
I didn't expect David Haye to win that. I thought Klitschko would win that.
I was a big fan of Haye back then, and I made the mistake of thinking he still had enough in both fights against Bellew. I think I overrated Haye quite frequently throughout his career. Yeah. Okay, so who's the most underrated that you've seen as you've been following the sport?
Underrated. I mean, he's actually thriving more now, but I'm going to say Joseph Parker's one. I've always seen him as a very, very skillful boxer with quick hands, a solid chin.
Same.
But he went very, very off the pace for a while. But I feel like he's not always, but I feel he went for a stage where he lacked a bit of a killer instinct in his fights. Whereas I feel like he's getting it more back now.
Okay.
So I think that Joseph Parker's been a bit of an underrated heavyweight over the years. I mean, when you look at his credentials about who he's been in with, albeit he hasn't won them all. You know, he lost to Joshua. I mean, the Joe Joyce fight, I went to that. I can't believe, like, looking back now, he lost that fight as well. But wrong tactics. But I've always seen Joseph Parker as an underrated fighter, really. But he's coming more into his own now since he's been with Andy Lee.
That's a great shout. I couldn't agree more. I thoroughly agree with everything you say about him. And I've always wanted him to do well as well. And people would say he's not necessarily exciting, but I just think he does everything so well. He doesn't do one thing spectacularly. He just does everything really well. The fundamentals, and a lot of heavyweights don't. For a heavyweight, he just boxes very sort of in a classic fashion, and I really like it. Now, so who do you think? How do you think he matches up against Dubois in a couple of weeks?
Well, I will. Obviously, I'll be doing a preview of the whole card on my channel. I see it as a really, really 50-50 fight. At the moment now, if someone was going to ask me, like, you put me on the spot with an answer, I would say Joseph Parker on points.
Yeah, great.
I just think he might have a bit too much skill for Daniel Dubois, but he has got, even though he's got a solid chin, I think he has got to watch getting caught because Daniel Dubois is a ferocious puncher.
Yeah, great fight. Intriguing. Okay.
Yeah, very good.
So, while we're in the heavyweights, who's at your number one in the heavyweight division in history?
Ooh, history. Well, as regards history, from what I've seen, I would probably have to say Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Which is probably a lot of obvious answers for a lot of people. But in my era of watching it, it's a toss-up between Usyk and Lennox Lewis.
Yeah.
Two very, very different fighters. Usyk, very, very skillful.
Yeah.
Lewis, probably not as skillful as Usyk, but a bit more power. So he could knock guys out. Whereas Usyk does lack in that department, but for what he lacks in that department, he progresses in every other department. So if I'm going to pick one, I'll go Lennox Lewis.
Spot on. Brilliant. I couldn't agree more. And so where you grew up seeing sort of post-prime Mike Tyson, but where would you have him in the all-time list? Does he fit in the top 5, the top 10, or nowhere near?
I think you'd have to have him in your top 10. I don't think I'd have him top 5 because, as I said earlier, I always thought he was the bully, but didn't like getting bullied himself. I always saw Mike Tyson. My dad always said to me about Mike Tyson, particularly when he fought Evander Holyfield. My dad always said to me, Evander Holyfield's all wrong for him. And I used to say, but why? And he used to say, because he's got a granite chin and he can box and he's not afraid. And Evander Holyfield stood up against Mike Tyson. We saw what happened in the fight, and then obviously the thing in the rematch as well. It was just he couldn't handle Evander Holyfield. He hated being bullied back.
So what, your father was saying that before they fought?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he told me Evander Holyfield would beat Mike Tyson. He
Brilliant.
did,
yeah.
Yeah, he always used to say that. I mean, I remember when that fight, I think it was 1999, something like that. I remember.
The first one was 96. The second one was 97.
Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry, 90. Yeah. Well, he was always saying, so I was, 13. He was always saying to me that, Evander Holyfield will have too much from Mike Tyson simply because he'll stand in front of him and give it him back, and he's got a good chin, and that's exactly what happened. So I always remember that prediction coming from him.
Brilliant. Oh yeah, and actually, that Holyfield was just magnificent in that fight. Like from the opening round, from the ring walk, you could tell he was a 16-1 underdog, I think, and he was not behaving like one. And he was an underdog in the rematch, big underdog in the rematch as well. Okay, so you must have met some pro fighters over your years in the sport. Any sort of highlight meetings?
Yeah, I've met Tyson Fury.
Oh, okay.
I met him at the Joseph Parker Huey Fury weigh-in. Yeah. Tyson was there. Peter Fury was there at the time. His dad was there. So like a lot of the Fury clan, I met them. I've actually got a photo of me and Tyson on my Instagram page. When we met that day. I mean, I'm something like 5'10", 11, and he looks absolutely huge compared to me. I've met David Hay in Germany, and I also was having a beer at the Hamburg High Street, and Adam Booth, who trained David Hay at the time, come down and had a sip of my drink.
Did he?
He did. He come down. I was chatting about David Hay, and he come up and had a sip of my pint and had a photo with me. Yeah.
How funny. Was he a nice guy?
Yeah, great guy. All of them I've met really. I mean, I've met Carl Froch as well at the weigh-in in Germany for Klitschko and David Hay, Johnny Nelson.
Okay.
I've met loads. I'm not obviously some of my press passes I've had before ringside. I've been able to meet Eddie Hearn and people like that. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah. So you have seen a few. Okay, so we talked about it at the beginning, but if you're on the spot, who would you have number one as the best British boxer you've ever seen?
Ooh, best British boxer.
Not including Lennox, because you've mentioned him.
I was just going to say that. Like I was going to say Lennox, but not including best British boxer. Let's think of skill over KO power. Carl Froch.
Nice.
That I've seen Carl Froch, because I went to the rematch at Wembley Stadium, Froch Groves.
Oh, you've been crackers, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I always remember that. I always remember that big KO, and he was hard as nails, Carl Froch. Yeah. So skill wise, he probably wasn't up there, but for toughness and grit and determination, I'd probably have to go Carl Froch.
Yeah, made of something else. So do you think he'd get part fantasy matchup, but get past Joe Calzaghe?
No, I think Calzaghe'd have. Well, see, I've gone. The thing is, like I said, Carl Froch because I've seen Carl Froch, I've watched him. Sure. Yeah. But Calzaghe, I've never seen Calzaghe like in the flesh or been to a fight of his.
Yeah.
I think Calzaghe probably just have a little bit too much skill for Carl Froch and stay out the way enough.
Yeah. Nice.
And outbox Carl Froch.
Yeah. Agree. Okay. So what about any one of these? So the best upset or sort of the most surprising result you've seen or the most startling knockout? Any of those spring to mind?
One of the best knockouts I've ever seen's got to be in person. It's got to be the Carl Froch against George Groves. That's got to be the ultimate KO. Yeah. The shocks, it's probably got to be last year when I was at Dubois Joshua.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a inkling with Joshua with his chin that he can get caught. But if he was going to lose, I didn't think he'd get dropped the amount of times he did against Daniel Dubois and get finished the way he did. That was a big surprise to see Anthony Joshua fall apart that badly the way he did against Daniel Dubois. Yeah.
From your seats, because watching on TV, it was obvious from the very first bell this was not going to be an easy night for him. Could you tell from in the stadium that the direction it was going?
Yeah, straight away. I mean, my wife was with me on that one, and I said to her in the first round, I said, buddy, I think was it dropped in the first round? I said straight away, I said, he's gone here. I said, he won't recover. And we all know that Anthony Joshua's power with recovery are, not brilliant. So, yeah, I knew straight away. I mean, we had lower tier seats, so even though you're far back at Wembley Stadium, you still can see, decent.
I mean, you've really been to some great fights, some real sort of historical British fights. That's fantastic. So,
yeah.
Okay, you talked about Tyson biting the ear, but what other bits of sportsmanship, like bad sportsmanship, anything that sticks out in your memory of the sport, or just a controversial decision or anything that just left a bad taste?
Oh, I've been to loads of controversial decisions over the years of boxing. I've been to loads, but actually thinking of one, like now, there've been that many, like actually thinking of one's quite difficult. Look,
we've got the Beterbiev rematch, Bivol, in a couple of weeks. Did you think that was how did you score the first fight?
I had Bivol winning that, but it was very, very close. So if it was like a controversy, I mean, like, some people had Tyson Fury very, very close against Usyk, didn't they? Particularly the first and second, whereas I thought Usyk was the clear winner in both of them. And I thought the right man won. But, you do have...
I think I heard you say recently you thought, and I had the same scorecards you had. Did you say you had Usyk by 8-4 in both fights? Did I hear that correctly?
The second one, I think it was 2 rounds. I think the first one was 3.
Okay.
So... yeah, look, you get like the fanboys of Tyson Fury, and like it happens with a lot of fighters that big their fighter up and say they never lost and that. But judges and scorecards is a big problem for me in boxing now because there's so many bad scorecards in fights. Yeah.
Well, in terms of we talk about the betting, your Catterall bet is a classic example of why you can afford to lose a tenner for a bit of fun, but it would have been nice to have 160 quid, absolutely. But if you had a serious amount of money, you have to factor in that you could be right, and you still don't get paid. And So, but the thing is, I just think there is still. It's the old thing. It's the same with VAR. It's the talking points. It's still kind of fun.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I mean, with boxing, for example, it's not just the judges' scorecards. There is things go on at times where you think, that ain't right. For example, I went to watch Nathan Heaney the weekend. We got our tickets off Nathan Heaney. So I went as sort of like a fan of his. When he got dropped in that fight the weekend, that referee, that first knockdown he had against him, that referee was doing all the things he could in the world to buy time for Nathan Heaney because he's the ticket seller, the home fighter. There's all things like that goes on. It's not just judges' scorecard. The Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight. There was biding time in that.
Well, the Usyk Fury first fight. Some will say that was perfect refereeing by the rule of by the letter of the law. He did absolutely. If the ropes keep you up, you get the count, right? But 90% of the population will say no. That referee was giving Tyson every opportunity he could.
Yeah. That was another funny scorecard as well. Sorry, just thinking back. Wilder and Fury, the draw. That was never a draw. The first one.
Yeah.
What a shocking scorecard that was.
I can't remember how I had that. Yeah.
I had Fury wide, and then they give it a draw so they could sell the rematch.
Yeah. Those draws. Yeah. So what about so when you're assessing the fights up a bit before you make a prediction, or when you're scoring during the fight, is there anything that you think you do differently that people who are watching this will think, oh yeah, I haven't thought about that?
No, I think when you're judging a fight, obviously these judges are paid what they call paid professionals. I have my doubts sometimes with some of the scorecards I see, but they always say it depends what a judge likes to see. I agree with that, but that's where you get so many conflicting scorecards. You know, you get a judge that will be a guy that likes work on the inside or likes work on the back foot, and then you'll get the other judge that loves the aggression but not really landing, but he come forward more. That's where boxing stumbles.
Yeah.
If a guy's coming forward in a fight and he's just coming forward and marching forward but not really landing much, I don't really see you can score that as like a winning round when it's just the aggression of marching forward. That's where the score cards conflicts happen.
Yeah. And I think people who don't score it, when they just see the optics of the aggressor, they cry they cry controversy, robbery, because they've just seen the aggressor. And you know, somebody made a great point after that Better Bivol fight, that if those judges had been around for Floyd Mayweather's career, he'd have 7 defeats. You know, if they don't reward his type of boxing.
Yeah, it's true.
So, what about? Do you have any favorite quotes from like the top boxers over the years?
The greatest of all time. That's got to be the most simple one. As regards things like that, I always liked Vitaly Klitschko as Dr. Iron Fist. I always liked that one.
Yeah.
Favorite quotes over the years. Yeah, I think that always sticks in my head. The greatest of all time. I just love that. I think it's straight to the point, and that's the way it's got to be.
Hard to argue with. And okay, so what about best boxing movie or a book or a podcast that you would recommend?
Book, I actually very much enjoyed Eddie Hearn. I can't remember what the actual book's called, but it's about his life, how he started, how Matchroom began. I'm actually starting to read his father's now, Barry. I got that as a present, not last year, I think it was.
Yeah,
I read a lot. I'm not a massive book reader, but I read like I've read the Tyson Fury, but I really particularly like the Eddie Hearn one.
Yeah, great.
Podcasts, I like a lot of the guys that follow me on X, and I follow them. Like I like Sam at SW Fight Hub. I've done work for Last Battle Boxing.
Yeah.
Jay's Fight Talk, STBX, Steve Nebak. He's having a bit of a breakaway from it at the minute, but I always went on Steve's monthly show. Yeah. And I like the IFLs and things like that, but me and you spoke off camera. I like to watch sort of like guys close to home as well, like the guys that are not with millions of followers and things like that. I like to sort of like the guys that have come through like grassroots and things like that. I like stuff like that.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Great. Okay, so final one is what is the best ring entrance you've seen, or the best goosebump moment? Referees giving final instructions when you can feel the heart beating. You know what it is to be a boxing fan.
Ring entrance, in all honesty, for atmosphere, is probably one of them's got to be Nathan Heaney. Right. He's fans. He's Stoke fans. When we was with them the weekend, the noise they make. He's a very good ticket seller. I mean, he's only, I say only, no disrespect, but he's at British level at the moment. And he even when he lost his fight last time and he fought this time, he's still got a massive, massive following. And I always remember the Lee Wood ring entrance as well against Josh Warrington, which was a fight I was at. That was electric atmosphere.
Yeah. Wow.
As regards, probably Anthony Joshua against Klitschko,
Yeah, sure.
When Anthony Joshua was piling in at Klitschko, the atmosphere of that fight and the heart. You know what? It's weird because even when fights start and you're at a big fight and it's just building up, I've actually been at fights with my wife and said, like, feel my heart, because I'm that. I don't know whether it's adrenaline. I don't know whether it's because I'm nervous about how the fight's going to go. I've paid my money and I don't want to have 2 rounds. I don't know whether it's that, but it's a mixture of emotions, isn't it?
Darren, I literally do the same. And she's like, I don't think you should watch this sport.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And it's not good for your health. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
That's superb. All right, Darren, look, what I've really enjoyed about this hour is that for the first time, every single question, bar Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas, you've answered with a fight you've actually seen live, which is incredible. Most people go through the archives and the videos and the pay-per-views, but I absolutely love the fact that you've been to so many fights, and every single one of those questions you've got a live fight to reference. So that's been superb. So we'll put it in the description, but obviously shout out your Twitter, your X, and your YouTube.
Yeah, my X is at Aston Darren. I've mainly talk boxing on there, a few little bits of other things, but that's my big social media platform for my boxing. My Facebook page, obviously Darren Aston. Instagram the same. Type in Darren Aston, you'll find me on there. I have recently started TikTok, which is just my boxing page, which is Sir Chat a Lot of Boxing, and then obviously you've got my YouTube page. If you type in Sir Chat a Lot of Boxing, I started up in October, but my first piece of content was November, which was with former Conor Benn opponent Chris Truman.
Yeah,
and I've popped several videos out since, and I'm enjoying the journey.
And so people watching, when you do your sort of the final preview before the fight, when does that usually go out, on sort of the Thursday, Friday, or Saturday?
I usually I used to do it a little bit earlier, but I've started to do it now. And mainly when fight week begins, which will be like an open workout on the Wednesday night. I might put it out on the Wednesday or something like that.
Yeah.
3 days before fight day.
Great. Well, we're in for a period of epic fights coming up. So yeah, there'll be a must watch. There'll be a must watch for me, absolutely. And like I say, Darren, really enjoyed that. Fascinating stuff, and yeah, hope to talk to you again.
Thanks for having me, David. I really appreciate it, mate. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.